Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. The recession has hit everyone hard. It has hit even harder for my husband. He was a software engineer at a much esteemed company, but because of the economy, his company fired almost 20% of its workforce, and my husband is one of them. These days, he is doing nothing but taking care of the household and helping the kids grow. As for me, I have a well paying job at a company. Being the breadwinner of the family, I sense some tension between me and him these days, but I tell myself it's rational, and if I was also fired from my job, which I'm passionate about, tomorrow, then I would also have a little reservation of opening up to people. Last week, my parents visited our house, and you know how they get. While talking, the overall air was quite negative, and that was very evident from the moment he uttered those famous words sarcastically. I don't have a job anymore. You could see my mother really pressing hard to force my husband into thinking that he has reached his lowest point in life and that actually he cannot provide for the family. Although they were indirect, the overarching environment can be compared to the pin drop silence in an operating room. After he got up to go to the washroom, I rebuked and scolded them by saying that their behavior is immature and totally unnecessary. The words which came out of my father's mouth is so reminiscent of the incident that happened last Thursday. He said that they have seen these things in life and my husband is not reacting to the situation at all. My father also blamed me for not taking control of the situation and told me that I was underacting, keeping aside the fact that everything was hunky dory, and once everything has settled down, it will get sorted. But then again, there is the element of the male ego. This is the determinant that is going to decide events in the future. He might not say something right now, but he will surely do it in the future. He is keeping it inside, and soon you will see him acting out, where one day he will just explode. This was in February. After that, there had been not many developments in our life. There was one which bothered him for some days, but finally he shook it off. He had a job interview at this company he really wanted to work at. At the allotted time slot, he gets a mail from human resource manager that they have to cancel the interview today as there have been some emergencies and to wait for the next day. I could feel that this was troubling for him, but he's one of those people who has been shy all his life, so people have taken advantage of him. I told him to not get disheartened as he will get something or the other and it will be something that he likes. I have a very good friend who works in a different company. She comes to our house often and we chat, and she also brings her husband who has struck up a friendship with my husband. This particular day, they came to our house, and as we were entertaining our guests, her husband, who did not know about the job problem, asked my husband how was things at work. He said quite bluntly that he does not work anymore and that he is at service of his very beautiful wife. Although they laughed, I think that they took it with a pinch of salt. To clear the air, I included that he lost the job because his company where he worked at was going through a major restructuring, and because of that, almost 20% of the workforce were let go, my husband being one of them. I further included I just cannot help but feel so bad that I earn handsomely for us too. I could say that he was hurt by this fact, but did not express anything. Her husband said that he was also fired from his last job, but his wife helped him out in that regard. I asked her how did she do that, to which she replied that the only hiring position that she is allowed is in the designation of her personal secretary. It should be someone that the person trusts and also who knows how to do the work assigned to them. She hired her husband. Although the position is temporary, it still gives him time to measure out his options and during doing so also accords him with a steady income. My husband listened to the whole dialogue quietly and then turns to me and says, "You could do the same thing for me, couldn't you?" I replied very politely that as her job does not require a personal secretary, it really is unnecessary, but the best thing I could do was talk to my boss about it. I think my answer did not charm him that much. Obviously, we talked with them for a few minutes and then they left, and along with them left that uneasy air of doubt. I felt so relieved when it was just the two of us in the house again, but my husband Kept thinking about things, and at one point in our relationship, he completely stopped talking to me. He kept surfing the internet for better job opportunities and treated me in a way that I did not exist. One fine night, I complained about this behavior, and he just straight up apologized for not giving me time and being busy with his own worries. Never in the life of our marriage of 5 years has he apologized straight up. I felt bad and apologized too for not understanding his state of mind that he was currently in and for infusing authority over him to give me some time when the fact is he's suffering so much. It was a beautiful moment, and I thought that now he would start conversing with me a little better. The next day, when I wake from sleep, I see my husband is nowhere to be found. Last night, he was talking about going for an interview today, and that was far, and he probably had to reach by 8, so he needed to get out of the house by 7. I did not have office until later that day as the work pressure was a little reduced, and I basically had to go to the office to punch in. From waking up there on, I had a bad vibe. Something might happen today, and it would not be very glorious. Anyways, I thought a hot shower would fix that, but to no avail. Even after becoming fresh, I was getting shivers and all, and I did not like that. On my way to the office, my car broke down and hence was late by around half an hour. On the way itself, there was a huge traffic jam. There had been an accident because of which the police have blocked the road and there was just incessant traffic. When I reached the office, the receptionist told me that I am expecting a visitor and that he had made himself comfortable in my cabin. I did not know who that was because I didn't have any previous appointments, but I thought it could be an emergency, so I wished the receptionist good morning and went to my cabin. When I opened my cabin door, I found a familiar face greeting me. It was my husband, and it felt like he was super happy to see me. He bought a bouquet of flowers and gave that to me as soon as I entered the cabin. I did not know what was happening, but for the first time in a long time, I saw a smile on his face. That really calmed me down, and I was happy for him as well. Then he uttered the weird words, which I was not expecting that moment. He said that he has decided. As I am doing way too much work supporting the family, it falls in his responsibility that he helps me doing so, for which he has decided that he would provide me his services and will act as the personal secretary. He would be at my disposal to whatever I say and will work according to my orders. He further mentioned that I should not worry and let him worry for me. It felt very overwhelming, not going too well. These words suddenly coming out of my husband's mouth was something I did not expect when I woke up today. Meeting me in my office was unacceptable as it was, but on top of it, he has the courage to choose himself for a designation that I am not authorized to allot. I should mention one thing. I talked with my boss the other day about the designation and if I can hire people, to which he replied that I do not need a personal secretary at this level and for which the company does not allot anyone. So it is not even in conversation. At the current moment, it was just fury coursing through my veins, and I started fighting with my husband in my workplace. I told him that I understand the difficulties that he was going through, but his treatment towards me has been unacceptable. Him even thinking that I would allow him to be hired in a role that does not exist after his actions is absolutely hilarious, and that instead of wasting time, he should find a job if he so urgently feels the need to do so. I had to call security, and the security did what he had to do. He kicked him out. The reason? He was just stupid. While going, he was shouting on top of his lungs, and I could see his eyes becoming teary. Am I the a-hole for not handling a situation that could have been handled if my approach had been different? It has been a month since the incident. Things have cooled down between us. After that day, my bosses shouted at me for creating a scene, and it was highly unprofessional. For him, he has started to teach little kids while he does a part-time job. Obviously, there has been no financial problems in our family, but I am happy that he has the peace of mind of keeping himself busy and not staying at home and portraying himself being all unemployed. I feel that whatever you did was completely unnecessary. Looking back at your history with familial interactions, I don't think that I am shocked to know that you would not stand up for your husband in public interactions, looking back at the fact that how you did not defend him in front of your friends and parents. I feel that whatever you did was absolutely the right thing to do. He was being a problematic person, and in the moment you took a decision and it was the right one. Sometimes you got to show people your power, otherwise, they start to take you for granted. My grandparents own a big old cabin where every generation after them have enjoyed annual family vacations. Due to the cabin's age, there is constant maintenance that needs to be done. Every time we've replaced, fixed, or repaired something, there is another thing that needs fixing. We also started slowly renovating the cabin as the interior has become quite dated as well. These costs have become too much for my grandparents to handle alone, especially since their age means that they can't do much of the work themselves and they need to hire professionals instead. This has caused them to implement a fee system. The rule is as follows: every person from the age of 20 years old needs to pay an annual fee to be allowed to stay at the cabin. The size of the fee varies as it is calculated according to how many people plan on using the cabin and how big the upkeep costs were the previous year. I've happily paid this fee ever since the rule was implemented, and so have my parents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. Every summer, my extended family tries to find a weekend during the summer where most of our vacations overlap so that we can all meet at the cabin and catch up. I decided to invite my girlfriend along as I want to introduce her to this tradition, as she is someone I'm imagining spending many future summers at the cabin with. She was ecstatic about the idea of meeting my extended family and going to the cabin, and she's very curious about it after hearing me talk about it a lot. Naturally, I sat her down and told her about the rule and how she needed to pay as everyone else paid. And it was only fair for her to do so as well, since she would be using the cabin when coming with me this year. This year's fee is around $200 to $400, depending on how many people use the cabin, due to a big roof leak and some pretty sustainable water damage. The idea of paying this fee really upset her, and we had a big argument where she concluded with saying that she would make other plans without me this summer. The rule is very simple and made completely fair on everyone. I don't understand why she thinks she should be exempt from it. My brother told me I should just pay her fee for her as my extended family really would like to meet her, but I really don't think that's fair for me to pay double the fee when she's completely capable of paying it herself. AITA? Why TA? She's perfectly within her rights not to want to spend $200 to $400 for a weekend at a shared, broken down cabin. It's not her family's property. She has no emotional attachments to it, and she may never reap the benefits of fixing it up. YTA, you are not renting the cabin out. You are contributing to your family's accommodations. She, on the other hand, is a guest, not family yet. And with all this, may not even be your girlfriend for too long. So it isn't fair to ask her to contribute to something that is your family's gain, not hers. You either had to exclude her out of the payment plan for this year at least, or until you go fiance or wife level, so that she'll be contributing to her future family accommodations, or pay for her from your own pocket if your family insists on paying her share. Inviting her over and then asking her to pay for something your family will keep in the end is not okay. I, 25 male, have divorced parents. I was 8 when their marriage broke up because my dad was seeing another woman, a co-worker actually. At the time, he and my mom had me and my sister, who was 6 at the time. My sister and I were pretty young, but dad moved out, say, April 1st and April 7th, when we went to stay with him. He was living with another woman who was pregnant and her 2-year-old, and he told us our family was going to be changing. We kind of figured he left mom so he could be a family with her and the kids. We never liked it, but we didn't cause much of a fuss either. So 11 years ago, some stuff happened. My dad and his wife were out of the country for what was supposed to be a short period of time, and my dad's mom was watching the kids. But she had a medical emergency and collapsed. My mom was asked if she would keep the kids until my dad and his wife could get home, and she said no. And nobody else stepped up, so they were in foster care for 5 days until my dad and his wife made it back and they got sidetracked by bad weather and delays on the flights. This has been a huge problem ever since. I always knew they didn't like it. So did Mom. She told me to ignore it. But recently, there was a barbecue for my dad's side of the family, and they all brought it up and said my mom was evil and soulless. My dad's wife said that the devil is alive in that one. And I told them they need to get over what happened. It was never her responsibility to take the kids. She was in no way obligated to take in kids who were not part of her family, and said that something that happens over a decade ago, that was the result of their own poor planning and actions in the past, and not anything to do with my mom being the devil or evil. They got mad at me. They asked how I could say such a thing when my siblings suffered because of my mom's actions. I said my mom had no obligation to them, and that if they had cared that much, someone else from the family should have flown in to take care of them until my dad and his wife got back home. They all think I was wrong for saying that because of my step and half siblings and how their feelings would be hurt if they heard me defending my mom who let them go into care. AITA? Every person at that table, other than you and your sister, had more of an obligation to take care of your siblings than your mother. In case I'm not clear, your mother had zero obligation to do anything. The only AH here are your family who was shit talking your mother in front of you. NTA, you were nicer than I would have been. I would have told them straight out. If you wanted a good relationship with my mom, you would have cheated on her, Dad. You wouldn't have cheated with him, wife. You cannot do people dirty and expect kindness when you need something. Further, I don't appreciate you saying anything negative about my mom in my presence. NTA, and totally correct in what you said. Your father, his wife, and his family all seem to also forget that his wife was his affair partner and the reason they split up. Why does he think the ex-wife he cheated on should have had compassion for them when they had none for her? He wasn't even man enough to leave her before he started sleeping with the wife. She was already pregnant when he moved in with her. You were very polite in not bringing up this old dirt, OP. If it were me and people were slinging mud at my mom, I would point them to their own mud hole first. I would have a conversation with my father privately that if he and his wife and his family brought up this crap again, I would be slinging the fact that he and his wife are liars and cheaters each, and every time from this point forward. That way, we can all see where the devil truly resides.